Welcome to the Fast Leader Podcast, where we uncover the leadership life hacks that help you to experience breakout performance faster and rocket to success. And now, here's your host, customer and employee engagement expert and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, Jim Rimbach.
Call Center Coach develops and unites the next generation of call center leaders. Through our e-learning and community, individuals gain knowledge and skills in the 6 core competencies that is the blueprint that develops high-performing call center leaders. Successful supervisors do not just happen. So go to callcentercoach.com to learn more about enrollment and download your copy of the Supervisor Success Path ebook now. Okay, Fast Leader Legion, today I'm excited because we have somebody on the show today who is going to take what we all perceive as kind of like practical wisdoms, very simple, understandable, but yet have an immense depth that you would never have expected. Kevin Vallely was born and raised in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. He has 2 younger siblings, a younger brother and a sister. His parents emigrated to Canada from Limerick Island when they were in their 20s and started a family. All of Kevin's extended family still live in Ireland. When Kevin was 10 years old, he began his journey to become an explorer. He and his younger brother, Michael, who was only 6 at the time, became separated from their parents in a large department store in downtown Montreal, late one winter night. It was closing time, and an overzealous security guard decided to kick them out rather than to help them find their parents. Without money or any sense of where home was, Kevin was forced to navigate himself and his terrified baby brother home through a raging winter storm. Through trial and error, and the chance discovery of a street name he recognized, Kevin was able to lead himself and Michael home. It took them over 3 hours in freezing cold temperatures. It was the scariest moment of Kevin's young life, but also became the most empowering. Shortly after, he began the dream of skiing to the South Pole. It would take Kevin 35 years to achieve this dream, but January 7, 2009, he made it to the pole and proceeded to break the world record getting there. Kevin studied architecture at McGill University and won the Royal Architecture Institute of Canada medal as a top graduating student in '89. He is a registered architect and still maintains a successful architectural practice while working as a leadership trainer and internationally recognized explorer. The legacy he is most proud to leave behind is his 2 daughters. He wants them to feel empowered just like he was when he was a kid. He has undertaken numerous journeys with his family, including a 1,700-kilometer kayak journey down North America's 2nd largest river, the McKenzie River, from the Great Slave Lake in the Northwest Territories to the Arctic Ocean in far northern Canada. Kevin lives in North Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, and is happily married with 2 teenage daughters. Kevin Vallely, are you ready to help us get over the hump?
Oh, I am, Jim. Very, very psyched too.
Well, I am glad you're here. Now, I've given my Legion a little bit about you, but can you share what your current passion is so that we can get to know you even better?
Well, I'm passionate about inspiring others to be better, and this is really at the core of what I do. And I've had an opportunity to reflect on that and think about my fundamental purpose in many ways. And I recognize that my adventures, when I undertake my adventures, is that I come back with skills, with a learning that then I want to share, and understanding that I can connect that wild wisdom garnered in the adventure world to the business world, to everyday life, to people struggling with their own issues or overcoming their own challenges. Is that what I've learned in that wild world has a direct application, and I really feel I'd love to share it.
Well, and I'm glad you do. For me, I've had a real joy reading your book, Wild Success. I definitely want to get into that. Because for me, it was one right after another, a story about some things that seemed very practical. We'll talk about those in a second. But it was like adventure story after adventure story. It was, heroes falling and having issues and getting some of them terribly almost maimed in the process and then rising up again. And, finding all of these things that we often, again, seem very practical and simple. It's like, oh, yeah, okay, whatever. But then the depth to them, especially when you start looking at these group of people, is just immensely enriching and priceless in many ways.
Mm-hmm. And the individuals themselves, and what is intriguing about it is, yes, it's that classic arc of a narrative where the hero to a challenge and then back to being a hero again. But for myself and my co-author, Amy Posey, what was fascinating to us was to dig a little deeper on what got them out of that low point and what magic do they have? What superpower do they have? And really what we recognized was that that's what our assumption was in some ways going in, that it's a superpower. You know, Mark Matthews, one of the greatest big wave surfers in the world, how does he cognitive reframe and how does he come out of something like this? It's like, well, he's just different than the rest of us. He's just this incredible guy who could do things. But the really interesting thing about the book and what we studied these extreme athletes and fully began to understand what makes them tick is in fact that those special skills are something we all have. And it's something we can all train. And what has made them get out of it, because they've exposed themselves as adventurers to these challenges all the time, that's their skill set. They're always pushing themselves to the limits, always facing adversity. So invariably, they have to build these skills to get themselves out of a hole. So what are those skills? And we can all learn them, and we can actually all thrive because of them. So that was the real aha for us, was recognizing that those special things, those superpowers are accessible to us all.
Well, and going back to those superpowers, they seem really simple. Although the first one, I'm really interested to get your full depth and understanding of it, because you call it cognitive reappraisal. Mm-hmm. And then we have grit, growth mindset, purpose, innovation, resilience, and then personal sustainability. So if you can, share with us what cognitive reappraisal is.
Yeah, it's funny. Cognitive reappraisal, it sounds very technical term. It's reframing. It's reframing a situation. Really, that's what it comes down to. How do you see a glass half full, half empty? I mean, it really comes down to that, but it's training ourselves to do so. And it sounds so much easier than it really is, because when you're really confronted with a difficult situation, I mean, even reflecting on what we're going through now, how we recognize the environment we're in with this COVID-19 crisis, is that how do you see it? How do you frame it? Do you frame it, okay, everything's going to hell and it's like we're all, the economy, or it's like, this is an opportunity for us to rethink and refocus, and we'll be better for it in the end. It's that quick mental ability to switch and flip. And that's something that Mark Matthews, as a surfer, has an incredible ability to do, but he's trained himself to do that. And he was confronted with a horrible situation where he basically was told by doctors he'd likely lose his leg and he'd never surf again, one of the greatest surfers in the world. Managed to flip his mindset when a young patient at the hospital came into his room who was even more hurt than him, was in fact became a quadriplegic, and saying to just see his hero, Mark Matthews. And he said right away, he realized, instead of feeling sorry for himself, he realized how lucky he was. He wasn't this young guy, and he flipped, and he did. And the amazing thing with Mark is not only has he come back, he's out there surfing these giants again. So it's this unique, amazing ability to just flip it. And we all can do it, but it's something we have to train small and to build up, so that when it really is at a difficult moment, like he was faced on his hospital bed, your mind is prone to doing it rather than just going in this death spiral into a horrible place, which none of us want to go.
Well, and even in the book, when you start talking about these seven key lessons in the chapters that leaders can learn from these extraordinary adventurers, is when you start talking about putting cognitive reappraisal into action, you say start small and practice. Right? That's a muscle, and the things you have to continue to do. You learn to recognize your emotions. Kind of like you were talking about Kevin, and realizing when the young kid came rolling in to his hospital room, and then also make that cognitive reappraisal a habit. Yeah. So, okay, we're practicing, but then how do you make cognitive reappraisal a habit? Are we talking about, shifting always to maybe an appreciative mode? Are we talking about, moving outside of ourselves and trying to get into other people's shoes? I mean, what do you mean by doing that?
Well, yes, on all aspects, and or maybe no on other times, but it depends on the situation, the circumstance, of course. But it's just simple little things, as much as I got a flat tire today, and how am I going to deal with this? And instead of getting into it, sort of really feeling upset with yourself, flipping and going, I have this moment to relax, and hey, my daughter's with me, I'm going to teach her how to change a tire. I mean, it's little things like that. It's just micro moments and making changes. But if you consciously think to yourself, this is not great. Oh, okay, let's see if I can flip this. and just do. And you're going to find the more you do it, it becomes habit. And next thing you know, when something serious comes along where you're inclined not to go that direction, your natural instinct will be to fall into habit and to look for the brighter side. We're talking Pollyanna here. This is just realistic optimism. Is so important. It's critical, and it's one aspect of every adventure that I've learned from, is that every adventure has to have a sense of realistic optimism, because when you're confronted with setback continuously, either you quit or you keep going, and adventurers keep going. That's what makes them do what they do.
Okay, as you're talking, I even start thinking, so for me, I spend a lot of time in the customer experience in the contact center world, and I start thinking about, dealing with customers and having to constantly do that. And I myself was picking up something in a grocery store at a deli counter, and the lady who was working there was complaining about them having multiple orders today and saying something to the effect that she wishes they just wouldn't deliver them, and she continued to go on. And I'm like, and I'm just sitting there, not necessarily judging her per se, but I'm like, gosh, we have 25% unemployment. Be happy.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that's what it is recognizing it. And for her to maybe just to switch that, flip that switch as well. Salespeople are the ultimate in cognitive reappraisal, because they always can see a situation and go, no, actually, and make it a really good salesperson naturally employs reframing. And they do it. Just, you can't allow yourself to just dwell on the negative. You got to find a bit of a twist to it, a spin to it, where you believe it as well, and it's real, and moving forward. And we go into a more positive mindset. We're naturally a little bit more creative, a little bit more accepting of things, and moving forward, and we're healthier for it. So again, a small little habit, but one that can have profound effects on us all.
Well, and like I was saying, so I'm a customer, I'm sitting there and I'm hearing that, right? So it's like, so then it starts impacting and affecting my experience. It starts impacting and affecting, other employees. So I think for me, the whole cognitive reappraisal and helping to teach everybody to do that. And then maybe even setting it as an expectation would be an important thing.
Oh, and for a leader, right? And as you were saying, right away, in a way, she was almost a leader. We're all leaders. This feeling that sometimes, well, I'm not a leader. Well, you lead yourself, you lead your family. It doesn't matter. But people also look to you and they see how you react to something. And frankly, if someone reacts well to something that's really bad, I had a friend who went through cancer, and I couldn't believe how inspiring he was through the whole process. And it was incredible. And now he's healthy. But I've just been struck by that. His ability to say, nope, flipped it, and became a leader to me in many ways, is going, wow, if he can do that, I can do that too.
Most definitely. Okay, so for me, though, when I look at you, I'm like, okay, career, architecture, very calculated, very structured, and then you have this adventure wild side. But I also start thinking how that could also be fed back into the work you do as an architect. And then just, because you have multiple disciplines that I think now enable you to have perspectives that are very unique. And so I can see how all of this is coming about, and you're taking what, like architecture, seems pretty practical and simple, but it has so much depth to it.
Yeah. And well, what's interesting there, Jim, is that in fact, they're so similar on some levels, because true architecture is coming up with a crazy, wild idea. Like if you want, and I love the idea of designing architecture, like something really kind of wow. And you have this crazy idea. It's like, okay, now how am I going to get this built? And you have to take a crazy idea and break it down into ultimately a set of drawings and specifications that you can hand over to a construction team that can go on site without you being there. And with nuts and bolts, they can build this crazy fantasy that you have in your head. Same goes with an adventure. You have this crazy idea. I'm going to ski to the South Pole. Okay, wonderful. I've got this crazy idea. Now, how do I start going about this? And you ultimately have to get to a point where you're taking one step after another as safely as you can in the context of this completely wild environment, and succeed at it. So in many ways, architecture and adventure are surprisingly similar. It's coming up with this crazy idea that somehow you make a reality. And how do you make it reality? There lies the magic potion, I suppose.
Well, most definitely. Okay, so then you start talking about going to grit, right? And you say grit, you say you need to rewrite your positive story, and we've been talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
There's one point here that I want to reserve and I want to talk about a little bit more, because I've heard conflictions in association with that. But you said control what you can. Okay, it seems obvious, but you talk. The other thing you talk about is fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
Now, I've heard a lot of people say that that's not something you want to do for a multitude of reasons. So I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Well, I disagree, humbly so, and I've used this so often in the past, and I can even I can reference from one of my clients, huge organization here in the U.S. in the world, and I remember the chief legal officer was telling me about a story where this massive organization just recently shared this story with me. Massive organization was breaking into two separate organizations, and the CEO at the time. It was a very difficult process, and enough so that they didn't know whether they were even going to make it. And they had the C-suite in, and they had a conversation, and it was a heavy, difficult conversation. At the end of it, the C-suite, they were all leaving, and all their faces were just feeling horrible. And then the CEO, she took them aside and said, "Team, put on a smile. You're going out. You are leaders. You're going out to your team now. Is that if they see that, they're not going to feel like we can do this. So no matter how you feel, you have to feel like you can get this done and convey that." And I feel strongly about it because as a leader, we all look to that person, no matter whoever is leading us forward through a difficult crisis. You look to your leader and you want to see how they act. No matter what's actually happening, you want to see if they're confident moving forward, you'll be confident. It's so critical at that moment. And to my mind is that, you're not lying about something, but you put a positive spin, again, cognitive reappraisal. But in that situation, what I mean by that is faking it until you make it. Even if you're not wholeheartedly behind something and you're feeling uncertain about it, put a smile on and be brave. If you're going into, think about it. If you're going into charging that in battle into the front line and your leader is nervous and scared, you're less likely to follow them. And if they're like, "We can do this, let's go," regardless of whether they believe it or not fully. So I feel very strongly about faking it until you make it. I've done it many times.
So then we have that growth mindset, and there's been a lot of work associated with, mindsets. I mean, Carol Dweck's seminal work in that area, and others have continued to expand upon that. But you talk about looking for opportunities, learning from feedback.
Yeah.
And then as well as taking risks and working hard. Again, okay. Seems pretty practical and simple. But what's the differentiator here?
Well, it's funny again. And a lot of times these things, you have to really think about them because we tend to drift towards a fixed mindset. This feeling, well, they're talented. They've got it. And that's the fundamental thing with Dweck's theory is that, no, actually, we can work at it and we can get better. And recognizing that, someone who has this mindset that if it's all based on talent, if you're going to be coming up against a challenge, you're going to see it as being an opportunity for other people to see you're maybe not talented, rather than someone with a growth mindset seeing a challenge as this is a way to make me stronger. So if I have a setback, it's like, well, okay, I'm going to learn from that. I'm going to move forward. So it's something that adventurers invariably have to have in a very, very strong way. We speak about Matt McFadgen with Growth Mindset in the book. And Matt has an amazing ability to just coming from very humble beginnings in Australia to wanting to be an open ocean sailor, which he succeeded in doing and makes it to Antarctica and back and nearly dies in an accident and then decides he wants to be a polar explorer and becomes one of the first people ever to go to the North Pole 3 times. So it's fascinating to watch someone just embrace risk, embrace uncertainty, learn from that and grow from it, rather than say, well, I just, I can't do that because I just can't. I don't have that. I just think it's a simple thing, but profoundly important.
Well, and even when you start combining even this next one together, I think it's the growth mindset and this one that really ends up being something that enables that internal motivation that will feed into some resilience that you talk about. So it's a combination of a lot of these things and their interrelationships with one another that are true differentiators. So I would dare to say, if you were to take some type of, say, scoring model or matrix and look at all these adventurers, you'd probably get multiple checks in a lot of these things.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Most definitely. Yeah.
So the next one being purpose, find your spark, align your spark with your core values. I think that's critically important so that you know where you stand and then also contributing to the greater good. So I think there's been many examples of these things right here, but for you, when you start talking about defining the purpose, what stands out?
Well, what stands out is giving for greater good. I mean, that is the fundamental foundation of it, is that why do you do what you do? I mean, really reflecting on it is that there's all these different reasons. You have values aligned with it, but ultimately we feel at our best in terms of purpose if we're giving more and helping others in some way. And that is the critical thing. It's your family members, your friends, your community at large, your country. But understanding that sense of purpose, that's where purpose comes in on such a fundamental level. And it's something we don't tend to think about a lot. And I think we need time to reflect on it, to really recognize it. But organizations that have a sense of purpose have been proven by every metric to be more successful, because people feel they're gonna be there for the long haul, because darn it, there's meaning in what I'm doing.
Well, I even know when you start talking about that, I'm starting to think about these adventures, and I start thinking about purpose. I'm like, what's the purpose of going to the South Pole there, Kevin?
Well, and actually, interestingly, there was some deep purpose with that in all the different ones. And interestingly enough, it stimulated me when I was out there. I had a dream to ski to the South Pole since as we alluded to there at the start, for 35 years. So I wanted to do this, and it was such an empowering thing. But when I was out there, I had a young offender connect with me, this young guy from a detention center in Chicago. And he asked me, how do you keep going? Why don't you quit? And I remember thinking, I had all these other emails that we had satellite technology. We had over 10,000 school kids following us, right? So all of them were like, are you cold? Yeah, we're cold. What are you eating? We're eating butter. There's funny little questions. Then how are you going to keep going? Why don't you quit? I didn't even know how to answer him at first, because I knew that this kid was connected with us. He was engaged by what we were doing, more so than he was a strike 2 offender. One more mistake, this kid was bumped up to adult court, adult prison. And here he was asking me, how do you keep going? Why don't you quit? And I realized there right now that I had an ability as an adventurer to transcend the simple act of me getting to the South Pole to actually inspire others, maybe inspire others to get him out of where he was, or maybe recognizing that. So there was a real aha for me through it all, going, yeah, it's great. I made it to the South Pole. And in many ways, completely meaningless. It's a little spot like anywhere else in Antarctica, but it wasn't meaningless to me in terms of my process of getting there. And it's that process that is the lesson. And that is hopefully something that this young guy, Sammy, heard, which he did in terms of an email, but also in terms of my actions and others moving forward ever since that day.
So then you get into, talking about innovation, which I think so many people are being forced into needing to do when you start talking about the COVID-19 thing. Yeah. But it's about dreaming big, embracing the struggle, and adjusting, your environment. Now we talk about the whole survival thing and Darwinism and adaptability, how important that is. But innovation, really is deeply rooted in the whole creative thinking process.
Yes.
And so for me, when I started looking at that from the adventure perspective, that is immense. When you start thinking about the creative process, everything from the whole preparation to the adjustments to the whole variability of weather to, all of these different factors and how the creativity starts coming into play. So totally. Let's get some of your perspectives on that. You even mentioned it before when you started talking about architecture.
Yeah. As an architect, you're hard to be creative. And innovation comes to me in a way somewhat naturally, I think, because it's what we've been trained to do and hired to do as an architect. And it's interesting. It's not like you can just log time and be creative. It's when I'm out on my bike. It's when I'm walking in the trails. It's when I'm walking my daughter to school. That's when the ahas happen. You got to put in the time. You got to churn away with it, but then you got to step away from it. And that's the key to innovation, stepping away. And that's where actually this whole crisis we're going through now, this is a forced step away, whether we know it or not. We've been doing something. Now we've been forced to step away. And many of your listeners are probably recognizing that, wow, we're approaching things a little differently now. And I'm getting all sorts of ideas around it moving forward. This is the magic of innovation. It's these moments, these stepping away moments. And in an adventure is a stepping away, of course, but you're forced to innovate quick. in that environment. And oftentimes it can be life and death unless you do it right. So being open to it, and it's definitely very much, there's tactical ways about being more innovative. And it's not what we think. It's not just sitting down for 12 hours at a desk and you're going to come up with a creative solution. No, actually step up, move away, get away from your desk. And there's something called an ultradian rhythm, in fact, which connects to all that. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but is recognizing those break moments are where the inspiration happens.
And so for me, even when you were talking, I started thinking about the whole open-mindedness aspect of it. I don't think you can be an adventurer and be closed-minded.
No, you wouldn't go out there. Absolutely not. You have to be open-minded to new things. I mean, if you've never, when we tried to row the Northwest Passage in a 25-foot rowboat, no one had ever done that before. So we were going to do something that no one had ever done before. And it's like, well, what are you going to be faced with? I don't know. I mean, there was no research. We have to figure this out. So yeah, you have to be open-minded and willing to pivot on a dime, because you're learning as you go. But boy, you come out at the other end of it, failure or not, as so much more knowledgeable and empowered to do incredible things, frankly, when it comes to it.
Well, and then you get into the whole resilience piece. And so we talk about preparing for worst case scenarios, sustaining strong relationships, and then create stories with a sense of realistic optimism. And I think even going back to what we were just talking about a second ago, I find and come across so many people that will not consider worst case scenarios. They're like, no, I don't even need to go over there because it might open up a door to this, or people might start thinking this. And I'm like, that's closed-minded, right? I mean, I think you need to be open-minded, and you need to really consider, other perspectives, and then therefore address those if need be, or plan for those if need be. And then sometimes if the answers just don't respond to it.
Or just put it to bed. I mean, then that's totally the wrong way. It's putting your head in, it's like being an ostrich, putting your head in the sand. I mean, it's just not the way to be resilient. And the fact is, just come up with scenarios. And right now, frankly, with what we're going through, is come up with scenarios. Maybe if someone says, well, what happens if I do lose my job? Well, what does that mean? And then you sort of plan it out. It's not great. We're not saying that these options will be great, but you at least have it tactically thought through. Then you put it to bed and you don't think about it again. But at least it's been thought through. And Lisa Blair, in our book, as open ocean sailor, a young woman, incredible, sailing around Antarctica, she had done that before she left and looked at worst case scenarios. What happens if I dismast in the middle of a storm in the Southern Ocean? It's unthinkable. It'll never happen. Well, it did happen. And there she was. It's like, okay, this is what I do, A, B, C, D. And she survived it because of that. Otherwise, you'll be overwhelmed by the moment. And then actually, you're not going to think at your best. So do it, think about it, plan for it. Don't be over melancholic about it, just being tactical, and put it away. And you don't even have to share it with people, but if you have it in the back of your head, it's not a bad thing. It makes you more resilient.
So now we're going to talk about the thing that you mentioned a moment ago when we get into having the opportunity to build your personal sustainability. And you mentioned setting boundaries, acknowledging your ultradian rhythms.
That's right.
And feeling your four energies. So I think we're going to have some really good insights into this.
Yeah. Well, and that chapter was all about me and balance, because I am a writer. I'm an architect. I happen to be an internationally recognized explorer. I'm a dad. And I'm an architect. And it's all these different things. It's like, well, how do you do that? Well, there's a score of other things that I've wanted to do as well that I've put to bed and said, well, no, that's not for me in terms of my world. But recognizing there is a balance, and how to balance your time to be effective. And the obsession and thought is that if you just work, you're going to get the most done. And I feel so strongly against that. And that's what I was saying with the ultradian rhythm, is that it's based like a circadian rhythm, but ultradian rhythm is during the day. Circadian rhythm is at night, and REM, sleep and deep sleep. Ultradian rhythm is all about how do you function during a day. And scientists are now recognized that we have this ultradian rhythm of about 110 minutes, where we work really well for 90, and then we start to fade out. And we need some rest. And it's roughly 20 minutes. Doesn't mean you have to take a nap, but it just means stepping away from what you're doing and then coming back to it. Could be just, answering boring emails or something where you're not thinking the same way, but you go in and out of a flow state throughout the course of the day. So for listeners, recognizing that is that just be more in tune with how you feel. After about 90 minutes, step up from your desk, walk around, do whatever you got to do. Go to the coffee machine if it means, or just take a walk around, go outside, clear your head, take a call, do something different, and then come back to your work. You're going to find actually that is an incredibly powerful way to be more productive and high performing.
Well, I think the whole awareness component of what you're talking about is really the key here, because there's even been other systems like the Pomodoro method where you sprint and work for a little while and take a break.
Very similar.
Yeah, I mean, it's just finding what works best for you. But when you start talking about going through these 7 key lessons and all these adventurers who you had the opportunity to interview and meet, and I'm sure you're personally connected to several of them.
Yep.
I started looking at inspiration, and there's a whole slew and multiple sources of it. And one of the things that we looked at on the show in order to give us some of that are quotes. And I'm sure you have tons of them. But is there one or two that you like that you can share?
Well, I probably don't have it verbatim, but T.S. Eliot's, at the end of all exploration or end of every journey is to return where you started and know the place for the first time. And I found that one really is so profound for me, and a lot of people have heard it, but I know what it means so strongly, is that I go on one of these expeditions and I come back to where I am, and it's a reboot. I just see everything a little bit differently, a little bit better. I see what's important in my life is what's really important and what's not, because there's no better way to know that than to be out in an environment where there's nothing but you and survival moving forward. And it peels away all those inconsequential issues, and you recognize what's important. And that's so important for all of us to get those moments. We're reflecting on family and friends, health, and just why I'm here and why I'm doing what I'm doing. So I find that quote, for me, resonates very, very powerfully.
Well, and when I started thinking about this and going through the book and even your storytelling and your adventures, the adventures that you had, even the early one with your brother, which was unplanned for. And even I saw you had the opportunity to share that story. I watched it on video, and you talked about a place where my wife and I stayed when we went to Montreal at the Chateau Champlain.
Oh, right. There you go. Okay.
So I got a good chuckle out of that. So thanks for that. But there's times, where, hey, we take off on a particular adventure, whether planned or otherwise. And, there's a lesson, there's a hump we have to get over, and we come back on the other side with that different perspective. Is there a time where you've gotten over the hump that you can share?
Yeah, there is. Interestingly, I traveled, as you mentioned, down the McKenzie River to the Arctic Ocean for almost 1,200 miles with my 2 daughters. And at the time, I think they were 9 and 11, little girls, my wife. Wilderness expedition. We're talking out there, nothing. And for safety's sake, big grizzly bears, wolves, and everything else, I had taken a shotgun just as an emergency item that I would never use. Well, I had to use it on one occasion with a big aggressive wolf approached us one morning, woke me from camp, and my little daughter woke me up and said, "There's something outside the tent, Daddy." And I stepped out, and there was this wolf, I'm telling you, the size of a hyena, and it was angry at me. And I tried to shoot away, and it wouldn't go away. And I remember finally, I wasn't going to kill the thing, but I shot over its shoulder and scared it away. But it didn't really go that far away. And we finally packed up and left. And it was just a jarring moment for me with fear about taking care of my family and what am I doing and why am I here and all these questions. And we came into town, and I spoke to one of the environment people there, and they said, "Oh, we call that the phantom wolf. He's a monster, and he's we know that he's out there denning with his females somewhere, and you probably came upon his den. So he wasn't down there to hunt you. He was down there protecting his pups." And I was doing the same thing. And it was interesting telling this story to my pups, and they got it. They understood it, and we stepped away and gave him his space, and we kept moving on. But I got to a point, do I continue or not continue at this point? We're about halfway through. And as a consensus as a family, we were going to continue. We recognized why that wolf acted the way it did, and we did. And through that process, seeing the empowerment of my 2 little girls at the end of it, they're different. They're turning into strong young women now, having been experienced something like that it's important to push through, but speak as a group, as a family. And they wanted to continue. We continued, and we're all stronger for it.
Oh, thanks for sharing that. Now, for me, when I started looking at the book, when I started looking at, all these different things that you're doing, talking about the architecture, talking about, the leadership work that you're doing. I mean, the number of adventures that you're still yet to do and want to do, with or without family. I'm sure
there you go.
A whole slew of choices. But I start thinking about a goal that you may have, and I know there's several, but is there one that you can share?
Well, my goal is a legacy, really, is to inspire and empower my girls to do whatever they darn well want. And that really is my overarching goal, is as a proud father and by my actions, giving them and empowering them to feel whatever they want to do. And it sounds so cliche to say that, but it's not. It's really the way I feel, is that critically, and we all know it as a parent, you know it too, is that you feel that way. You have kids, you want them and the best for them. And as young girls, I just want them to be empowered. So for me, that's the critical one. Many ways, I don't have to keep banging that nail in anymore in terms of recognizing the adventures I've done over the years. I love doing it, so I'll keep doing it. But I need to prove anything by any stretch. That's long gone. I'm in my 50s now. I'm way past that. At this point in the game, it's hopefully inspiring others to be their best. And I find that just hugely inspiring for me.
And the Fast Leader Legion wishes you the very best. Now, before we move on, let's get a quick word from our sponsor. An Even Better Place to Work is an easy-to-use solution that gives you a continuous diagnostic on employee engagement along with integrated activities that will improve employee engagement and leadership skills in everyone. Using this award-winning solution is guaranteed to create motivated, productive, and loyal employees who have great work relationships with their colleagues and your customers. To learn more about An Even Better Place to Work, visit beyondmorale.com/better. All right, here we go, Fast Leader Legion. It's time for the Hump Day Hoedown. Okay, Kevin, the Hump Day Hoedown is the part of our show where you give us good insights fast. So I'm going to ask you several questions, and your job is to give us robust yet rapid responses that are going to help us move onward and upward faster. Kevin Vallely, are you ready to hoedown?
I guess I have. Here we go.
All right. So what is holding you back from being an even better leader today?
Maybe still being not hugely confident and certain in myself. It sounds as crazy as it is, but is always questioning myself and recognizing that, I could always do better. So maybe a little bit of uncertainty, always.
What is the best leadership advice you have ever received?
Trust your gut. I really feel that strongly. Really trust your gut. I've learned that is that if something feels wrong, don't do it. If it feels right, figure out why it's right, but you kind of know what. Trust your gut.
And what is one of your secrets that you believe contributes to your success?
Perseverance. When I stick my teeth into something, I hold on tight and I don't let go.
And what is one of your best tools that helps you lead in business or life?
Positivity. I have a positive frame of mind. No matter what it is, I try to look on the positive side of things.
And what would be one book that you'd recommend to our Legion? It could be from any genre.
Any genre. Oh, geez. I really enjoyed Simon Sinek's Why. I think it's fantastic. It's really inspirational, and I've always enjoyed it. So, fairly recently, I just read it a year ago, so I'd suggest that.
Okay, Fast Leader Legion, you can find links to that and other bonus information from today's show by going to fastleader.net/Kevin Vallely. Okay, Kevin, this is my last Hump Day Hoedown question. Imagine you've been given the opportunity to go back to the age of 25, and you can take the knowledge and skills that you have now back with you, but you can't take it all. You can only take one. So what skill or piece of knowledge would you take back with you and why?
Whoa. Believe in yourself. That would be it. Just believe in yourself. And again, you asked me earlier, what hold me back is that sometimes I don't, but believe in yourself, that we're capable of so much more than we think we can do. You got to believe in yourself. You can't, if you just at least give yourself that leg up. Believe in yourself, because if you don't believe in yourself, why should anyone else believe in you?
Kevin, I had fun with you today. Can you please share with the Fast Leader Legion how they can connect with you?
They can connect with me on my website at just kevinvallely.com, and they can reach out. We'd love to chat, and please read our book if you can. And again, that website is morewildsuccess.com. And I'd love to hear from you.
Kevin Vallely, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. The Fast Leader Legion honors you and thanks you for helping us get over the hump. Thank you for joining me on the Fast Leader Show today. For recaps, links from every show, special offers, and access to download and subscribe, if you haven't already, head on over to fastleader.net so we can help you move onward and upward faster.